Our first guest tonight is an Emmy Award-winning comedian, writer, producer, podcaster, and recipient of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, who spent 16 years as the host of this show. Season 2 of Conan O'Brien Must Go is streaming now on Max. Please welcome back to Late Night, the one, the only, Conan O'Brien, everybody. I'm thrilled to have you here.
This is an amazing group right here.
I feel like this is...
the danger here is that I will never leave. This is such...
We were warned about that if it was too hot a crowd, you'd stay for a while. Yeah.
It's like I just puff up, and then I just want to be here all night.
How does it feel to walk back in the door? I mean, I know you've been back. You were back for the SNL 50th.
Yep.
You've done the Tonight Show, but how does it feel to walk back into 30 Rock?
It is beautiful. I mean, there was, I spent between my show, the late night show that I took over from Letterman, and then SNL, if you add those up, I was here almost 20 years in this building. And then I didn't come here for a long time. And then I came back briefly, and they showed me my old studio, and it was Dr. Oz.
Yeah. We thought that was a nice tribute.
Yeah. You know, it's like, I'm going to go see the house where I grew up, that little gingerbread, you know what I mean? And it's a Jiffy Lube. And they said, oh, you missed Dr. Oz. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm not sure he's a real doctor. I question his...
This completes a circle for me. My very first talk show appearance was 2002 on your show. So having you here...
Oh, my God, look at you.
Yeah, child. Getting a lot wrong. Getting a lot wrong.
Look at this. That is so great. You look like a contest winner. Really glad to be here.
Also, the size of the collar would make you think I was there in the 60s, but it was like the early 2000s.
Or you're a nun. Either way. Yeah.
I feel like my writers, everybody I feel like who works at a show like this has a lot of love and respect for your show. And they often, I feel like, if I say no to something, I think they want to scream at me, Conan would have liked it.
Conan's still alive.
Yeah.
If Conan were alive today, I'm just eating soup in the corner. I'm here.
But did everything that came across your desk, did you love it all? Or were there
God, no.
Yeah.
I think I'm well known. I love writers. I was talking to your writers. I think you guys do a beautiful job with this show. And I said, after we were talking, I said, where are the writers? I want to compliment them. They do an incredible job. And
they were like, they all went home?
Yeah. They all turned around on the expressway. No, it was just lovely to see them. But I would famously, at my show anyway, I would get into it with my writers.
Yeah.
In a kind of a comical way. I would play that overbearing guy who I wasn't really, but also it was my way of, in a passive-aggressive tone, letting them know I didn't like it. My writers over the years were amazing, fantastic, and they came up with, everyone knows, or a lot of people come up to me and say, Masturbating Bear, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, all these other fun things, but there was some that no one ever mentions that I loved, which was, we did once Horse Riding a Horse, which was... I think we have a picture of that here somewhere.
We have Horse Riding a Horse. Now, what was the inspiration behind Horse Riding?
We used to just cut to it. You have to have physical cards?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a horse riding a horse.
There's no idea behind it. I always was looking for silliness that resonated in my brain. There was another one we did, which was called The Always Disappointing FedEx Pope, starring Brian McCann.
Great Brian McCann. So
it was just a guy pretending he was the Pope with a FedEx Pop. And I loved it, and then he came to the Twain Prize.
Yes, he was there.
Which was lovely. And then I loved Shoeverine. Yes, by Andrew Weinberg, which was Wolverine, but he has shoes on his hands. So those were the ones I liked, and then the writers came to me with...
So I'm going to say, before you say there's ones you don't like, based on the three things you just liked, I don't blame them for thinking he's going to go for anything.
Yes. I know what you're thinking. Was I medicated? Yes, I was. But I loved very silly visual. I've always had a very cartoonish sense of humor, and I like things to be visually silly. I always thought I want people to laugh at the show if the sound is off, which they would have anyway with me, but who has hair like that? And then, but I would say, and then they would get really high on something and say, this is fantastic. It's I think it's a basset hound that's dressed like a minister, and he dribbles a basketball while the song Sweet Georgia Brown plays, the Globetrotter song. And I read it and I went, huh? And they showed it to me at rehearsal and I went, no. And I think you have it. And they pushed and pushed and pushed.
What is this character's name?
Otis K. Dribbles.
Okay. So a basset hound that dribbles a basketball.
Yeah, and Sweet Georgia Brown plays, and I was mad. And I would say, I pay you guys? You all get paid for this? And we got into it, and they insisted, and we showed it on the air. And literally, while Otis K. Dribbles was dribbling the basketball to ba-dum-bum-ba-dum-ba-dum, clear that. That's your money, not mine. But while they're doing it, I'm in the corner looking at the audience going, because the camera's not on me, so I'm trying to kill it.
Yeah.
And they brought it back a few times, but no, writers aren't always correct.
Did they argue that it was a hit? Did your writers try
Yes, the writers were like, my neighbor loved it.
You
You can't fight that argument. There's some solid science behind that.
When you were
Don't shout at me.
No, you listen.
Yeah, you see here.
I've had enough of you recollecting.
I could go on and on.
This I had no idea, but when you worked at SNL, you would go, one of the quiet places you found to work was the Letterman late night set.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's talk about, Oprah always says, manifest it and it will happen. She says that to me personally. We're very close. And don't laugh at that. It's possible. You were right. We don't really know each other. I think she knows who I am. But yeah, I wrote with my partner and good friend and genius, Greg Daniels, who created every good TV show that's ever been made. Office, King of the Hill. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It angers me. But we would feel like we need to go someplace cool or someplace different to write, not just stay in the office. So we would wander around, and we would always gravitate towards Studio 6A, which was David Letterman's late night show. And I would gravitate towards Dave's desk and his chair, which had a big cover over it to protect it from idiots like me. And I would sit behind it, and Greg and I would think of ideas. I don't think we did much productive work there, but I would go there regularly and sit behind Dave's desk, and I was, this is a couple of years before, out of nowhere, they go to Lorne Michaels to say who should replace David Letterman. This is back when there's 2 or 3 late night hosts, and that's it, and they're just these, it's like, who should we add to Mount Rushmore? And Lorne said, I know this guy, his name's Bix Widley. So I will maintain, I would never say in a million years I was Lorne's best pick. I'm not in that category, but I think I was his bravest pick.
Yes.
Because at the time, Lorne Michaels went out on a huge limb and said to the network, trust me, they saw me, they watched me on air for a year, and they said, Lorne, you were wrong. And Lorne was like, nope, you'll see. And they still don't get it. But Lorne, I love you and thank you.
I want to ask about Conan O'Brien must go. We'll be right back with more Conan O'Brien.
This is chocolate con churros, and this thing is very well known as the great moment of the hangover. You go partying all night, and then without sleeping, you take chocolate with churros.
I think we should pretend in this moment that we have been drinking all night.
We're here with Conan O'Brien. That was a clip from Conan O'Brien Must Go. This is a fantastic show, but it struck me that you always thrived outside of the studio.
I love getting outside, yeah.
I I feel like I have no control once I get outside, and I get very tight, and I have a lot of anxiety. Do you have
Right.
to work through that at all?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I was with Javier in Madrid. He's an A-list superstar, leading man, and I was so nervous, even after all these years of doing this, 30 some odd years of doing this, I was like, I don't want to waste his time. What if we get out there and it's not good? It's when you have, you feel like you need to take care of these people, and it was really maddening, and that happens a lot. And then, of course, he turned out, I kept saying, you can go now, Javier, I think we got enough. He's like, what are you talking about, man? Onward, we must go to the next, we must do more. He was one of the most delightful improv partners you could have. He's hilarious, he's wonderful.
Well, that's a thing you probably clock pretty fast, whether or not the person you're with is going to need a ton of help, or whether or not it's going to be a partnership.
When you came backstage and said hi, I knew you were in trouble.
Yeah.
And
that's why I like to go back.
Yeah,
I want the guests to know, like, you are not in safe hands.
And this is a very bad car.
I like to go back. I mean, I think I came in, I mean, we could tell him. I came in, I was like, oh, like, I just full nerves.
He was a mess. But we got you into some new pants. Yeah, I think I mean, at the end of the day, all this is finding your way of connecting to the next person. And for everybody, it's different. So I managed to find the things that I like to do, and you have found the things that you really love to do that pop. And I used to think over the years, I was on, we're on in this very late time slot, that there's a giant orchestra, there's a lot of noise, and I'm just banging my triangle. Is anyone even hearing me? And this sounds crazy, it's like some Buddhist idea, but if you just stay true to what you believe in and you keep doing it with purpose, eventually they'll only hear the triangle. And turns out that's not true.
It's nice. It was so nice till the ending.
Like, what the hell? He's gone insane. That's exactly how all of them talk.
Yeah. I did a Q&A.
In the commercial break, they were like, you did a good job. But I do believe that, and I will go to my grave believing that. And I think you're proof, and your staff is proof, that you just, there's a lot of noise. There's more late night than there's ever been. There's the internet. You're competing with all this noise that I didn't have to compete with, but you just keep doubling down on sharp, smart, this is our integrity, this is what we want to do, and your style, and not selling yourself, not trying to do what someone else does, and it cuts through the fog. It does, and it's really beautiful.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Obviously, it does strike me, and I'm very obviously grateful that you chose to do this, but with your podcast, did you miss the idea of talking to people?
Oh my God, well, I started doing the podcast while I was still doing the TBS show, Conan. My idea for the name. And
wait, since you said that, what was you didn't want to call late night. You wanted to change it.
Yeah. When Robert Smigel, I take over the late night, and the whole country is saying, there are articles that say this is insane. Who is Conan O'Brien? This is a bad idea, and that's my family talking. And everyone thought this isn't going to work. And so that was bad. And I don't know. I remembered. We were so afraid of being compared to Letterman because he's a genius. He invented this time slot and this sensibility. And we kept thinking we don't want to be associated. We want people to think we're doing something different. Let's not use the name Late Night. And Robert and I became convinced that we should change the name to Nighty Night. I'm not kidding. We were convinced that it should be Nighty Night with Conan O'Brien, and that would show everyone that it's a different show. And we had a meeting with this guy named Rick Ludwin, who was a saint and a wonderful man, but old school, jacket and tie. He went in and talked to Johnny Carson every night about the show, and then he'd come and talk to me about my show. And this is how it's done. He was the guy in Late Night who was the old school, and he'd tell us where to put the mic and how to sit. It was just a different environment back then. And we went in and we said, let's hear us out, Rick. It's not Late Night anymore. It's Nighty Night. And he started scratching the back of his head. Really buttoned-down guy, but I saw 4 blood vessels burst. Late Night is a proven franchise. We have built that franchise. We were going to keep that franchise. That franchise will last. Long outlive you. We're going to keep that. And we're like, all right. great. We ran away, you know.
Can I also just say, because nobody knows, that's an excellent Rick Ludwin.
Yeah,
I was lucky
yeah.
enough to know the man, and that is not a comic tape. That is essentially who
he passed away a couple of years ago, and it was a real loss because he loved television.
And he loved this format so much.
And people out in L.A. really didn't. They were looking at my show, Horses Are Riding Horses. It looks like the apocalypse. And they were not happy, and they were saying, and they said we got to get rid of Conan. Let's get rid of Conan. We have everything's going our way. We got Seinfeld, we got Friends, we got da-da-da. Conan, what is this? This is God, I wish I hadn't thought of that.
Nighty-night, nighty-night.
Yeah. But Rick Ludwin was the guy that would go in and say, I just sat through a taping and something's happening there. And they're onto something. And he fought for us. He also fought they were going to cancel a little show called Seinfeld.
Yeah.
They were going to cancel it after a season or two. And he took money out of the late night budget to keep Seinfeld on the air.
Yeah.
And Jerry has been very gracious about saying, you know, he came to the eulogy that we all went to for Rick, and he said, you know, he kept that show on the air. So now the audience is like, now, they didn't care that I was kept.
Yeah.
They're like, Seinfeld could have gone away? What am I, chopped liver?
But so you start doing the podcast during Conan on TBS.
Yeah.
And
as a joke. I mean, I didn't think I should do I just thought, podcast, I'm on television. Why? And I didn't understand. And then I started doing it, and they said, Conan, you're going to have to read ads, though. That's probably why you're not going to do it. And I said, do I get to read them as myself? And they were like, yeah. And I went, hey, all right. And so I have so much fun reading ads for a bidet and making fun of the product and saying, why am I doing this? And who would buy this? And the company loves it, so everybody wins.
that's great.
And so I eventually, and then what's funny is that I loved late night, but when it was time to go, when I felt like I think I'm done here, I thought, yeah, I did it. I don't want to do that anymore. So I start really doubling down on the podcast. Podcast is doing really well. And then people started to say to me, my producer and everything started to say, like, you know, it'd be great if we did some live ones. And I said, oh, yeah. So I started doing live podcasts. I've done them in New York. I've done them in L.A. I've done them around the place. So I'm doing live podcasts. And then they said, you know, it'd be great. You're on stage anyway. We should have a band there. And I went, you're right. They had a band. And then I'm doing a band, and I'm in front of an audience, and I'm interviewing a guest. And then they said, we should add a little comedy up front to loosen them up. And I went, you're right. And then they said, we should probably do some ads in there. And I said, wait a minute! I see what's going on here. The next thing you know, I'm up there doing the string dance, and, you know.
Nobody would complain.
There's no getting out.
Nobody would complain. What a delight to have you here.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
You're a great man, and I love what you've done here, and I wish you all the best, and I will see you around. I'm here whenever you need me.
All right.
I think it's going to be a long time before I'm asked back. Love the crowd that talks in a Southern accent. Oh, you know you do. Now you're trying to do it. Yeah.
You guys, look who it is. It's Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien must be
Really great.
now.